Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to the Harpin on Rugby Preview Show. Joining me to look ahead to this week's final round of the URC is someone earning cap number 36. Welcome back to Mr. Mark Jackson.
Thanks for having me again, Jeff.
No problem at all. Just before we crack on with the preview, Mark, we had more Leinster signings during the week, plus some news about players going stateside. Why don't you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the stateside travellers. Apparently, Chicago Hounds, who were in their first season of the MLR, seem to have gotten their hands on Dave Carney and Adam Byrne. Adam Byrne was released by Connacht, was told he was released by Connacht at the end of the season in the past few days. And obviously, if Dave is coming to the end of his Leinster tenure, he has a stake along with his brother Rob in the Chicago Hounds. So they've had a pretty rough start to their first MLR season, but they seem to be getting the recruitment drive going early, and two quality additions there. And you never know, there could be a third Irish back three player. Craig Gilroy might be of interest to somebody in the MLR as well. Personally, I don't see Gilroy interesting too much from the French or say Japanese point of view, so he could be stateside bound as well. And three really good additions to the full Leinster squad. Bingo Bob Russell and Alex Soroka, thoroughly deserved, and McKee has certainly taken his chances very well. To come up with McKee's story is great. The fact that he was talking to a few of his friends on the UCD campus about what Leinster were at, and then got involved, and it just goes to show you don't have to go down the recognised demographic private school route all the time to get your shot. You know, if you're good enough and you're willing to work hard enough, the carrot will be dangled. And fair play to the three lads for getting the bump in obviously what is a massive pay rise, and will send us well over our non-existent salary cap of what some Welsh people seem to think is around 25 million euros at this stage. It must be reaching those astronomical amounts.
Sure, we're Manchester City, don't you know? That's essentially what we are like. You know, we're going around the world signing up all these players and keeping them to ourselves. You know.
Yes, all those oil riches off of
That's it.
South Coast and D4.
Yeah, just off Howth there, you know. But okay, well, we wish them all the best. And so anyway, listen, now it's time to start harping on this week's feature match, which, as you can see there, is Vodacom Bulls v Leinster. It's in round 18, which, like I said, is the final regular season round of the United Rugby Championship, and it kicks off at Lostis Versfeld at 3:05 p.m. Irish time on Saturday, April the 22nd. The match is being broadcast on TG Cahir, Viaplay, Premier Sports, and URC.tv. Leinster named their starting lineup at lunchtime on Friday. So let's have a look at the team, starting with the back line. At fullback is Chris Cosgrave. The wingers are Dave Carney and Tommy O'Brien. The centre is Ben Brownlee and Liam Turner. And the halfbacks, Nick McCarthy and Sam Prendergast.
Yeah, I think it's a good vote of confidence for how the guys went last week. You know, the standouts for me, obviously, people will go Sam Prendergast, which is a quick word on Chris Cosgrove. It's another chance for him to become the next Jimmy O'Brien, the next Hugo Keenan. You know, he's done nothing but impress since he's been in the side, and you know, his kicking game was very well utilised last week with that 50-22, which probably was the turning point of that game for me last week against the Lions. And again, another chance to get some decent length onto his kicks up in the high veld at Loftus Versfeld. So I think Nick McCarthy might be a bit lucky to get another go at it, but he is a leader. He's an older head, and I look forward to him picking his game up from last week, and hopefully young Murphy coming on with the same sort of impetus that he did against the Lions.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll move into the forwards now. The front row is Ed Byrne, who's the captain, Tyg McElroy and Tom Clarkson. Second row, Alex Soroka and Brian Deeney. And the back row, James Culhan, Will Connors and Max Deegan.
Yeah, the standout player out of that lineup for me again is a guy who was oft criticised for being a bit inconsistent, but Max Deegan had an excellent game last week, and he's going to have to shoulder a lot of that Rhys Ruddock responsibility this week being the head. It's good to see Ed Byrne back in. I thought Milne coming on the bench may have even usurped Ed Byrne in the pecking order of loose heads at the moment. But there's the only slight concern I would have of that selection is, I know some people have used the word callow. I would just say a little bit lightweight potentially for what is up against them in the lighter blue jerseys across from the opposition. But Soroka, I still think is a 6, but he's doing a job in the second row. I'd like to see a bit more from Deeney. He was a little bit erratic at the start of the game last week. But good chance for McIlroy and indeed Clarkson as well to put marker down for coaches' thoughts going into preseason.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same backline, but they have made a few changes in the pack, so it'd be interesting to see how the units work together, because they'd be there for the first time. But like you say, Deegan, he's got it's one of his biggest challenges now. He's going straight up against Elric Lowe, so that'll be an interesting battle there. But like you say, he's well able for it, and he can definitely do it. Right, we'll move into the bench now, and the front row on the bench is Lee Barron, Michael Milne, and Temi Rasisi. The other forwards are Conor O'Tiernig and Liam Maloney, and the backs are Ben Murphy, Charlie Tector, and Rob Russell.
Yeah, it's a very lightweight bench coming on there, especially up front. Tector might be a bit miffed. Apparently, there's a couple of rumors going around that he may be headed further north than Dublin. So we'll see what happens there in the next few weeks. But it was a big vote of confidence to Sam Prendergast to see out that game against the Lions. So it'll be interesting to see this Tector get some time at 10. Rob Russell will be G'd up by his new contract. Be interesting to see how he goes when he comes on. We know Tommy O'Brien still coming back from his injury. It was a bit rusty last weekend. Did mix the good with the bad. So I'd say Russell will potentially get a 30-minute run out there. Murphy, I thought, was excellent when he came on. And I'm sure he'll get another run out. It's good to see O'Tierney coming back from his under-20 stint. He had an excellent under-20 Grand Slam. Huge ceiling again, big, tall, very good line out forward. Again, along with Maloney, not the heaviest players to be bringing on against a pretty gnarly, grizzled pack who were full of big, powerful athletes. So, yeah, I think the starting lineup will probably see more minutes than they might usually do, injuries aside, with the coaching team of the academy coach, I can't remember his name, but Sean O'Brien looking after the guys down in South Africa this week. It could be 65 minute stint from most of the players, whereas usually you might get 10 minutes less as a front row. I think the front row would probably have to, especially Clarkson, because he's very, again, high ceiling, but not experienced. And Barron had a bit of a shocker last week. And, if he gets a chance to get some retribution, brilliant. But I would say McIlroy and Clarkson will probably see 65 minutes before they're hooked.
Yeah, you made a good point there. It's not just a reduced Leinster team in terms of experience, but we've also lightened the coaching team as well, because the Collins and Lancasters come home, and Shani O'Brien is taking over the reins. But still, they still know what they're about, and it'll be interesting to see how they go about it. Right now, it's time to have a look at our opposition, which of course is the Vodacom Bulls. And as ever, my graphics department's put the names there on the screen. If you're listening to the podcast, you can find them in the program notes. How's their lineup looking, Mark?
The spine of a team tells you what they're about, and the spine of that team, from hooker, second row, to captain Yorty, to Eldrick Lowe at 8, Johan Gusson at 10 is an excellent player, and the fullback who scores tries for fun. That's a strong team. The Bulls will be one of the most frustrating teams from a South African point of view, possibly along with the Sharks, insofar as they scored 70-odd points against Zebre last week, and they could easily go out and put 20 on Zebre and get involved in an arm wrestle. Do they always play to their potential? Potentially not, but when they do, they're a very dangerous side, as we found out to our detriment at the RDS last year. The Bulls can front up against most teams. They've got some excellent quick backs. I know they're playing a bit of fiddlesticks with some of their bench players, naming one guy on this. I think Hendricks is on the bench for both the Curry Cup selection and for the URC selection. I think overall they've had a pretty disappointing season, maybe compared to last year, but they're still a very, very dangerous team. And sometimes matching up against as good as Leinster are and as good as our depth is, this is going to be a proper test of even more so than last week. Don't get me wrong, the boys were amazing last week, and as I said, it was one of my favorite games I've ever watched for Leinster. But this has a different feel about it. Looking at that, the Bulls selection, especially from, as I said, the spine of the team, from 15 right down to the hooker, to Grobbelaar, and they're you got that guy who's, I think he's got 2 World Cups in his back pocket, in Bismarck du Plessis, or he's got 1 anyway, and he's still going, or whatever it is, 55 years of age, whatever he is nowadays. That's, as we said in the WhatsApp group, it'll be some excitement and some experience for some of our younger front rowers to come up against a player of his caliber, even if he is spending probably 90% of his time on the farm these days.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting the way because the way the league works now is we play 2 South African teams away one year and the other 2 the next, and the way it's shaken down for Leinster is that we get the 2 altitude games in one after the other each year. So they coped very well with that last year. Obviously, nobody expected us to be coming from behind at all, but let alone the last 20 minutes of a game at that altitude. But now they have to do it again this week, so it'll be a challenge. And like to say, the Bulls, nobody expected them to beat us last year in that semi-final, and they came up with an amazing performance with a lot of the same players. Grobbelaar was a pest that day, if I recall, and but now they've got all the advantages on their side now, so it should be an interesting matchup. Okay, so now we're going to have a look at the match officials quickly. It's Craig Evans holding the whistle, and you see his assistants there. The weather for Pretoria on Saturday is the actual AccuWeather description is mostly sunny and delightful, it actually says. So that's interesting language there. It's 26 degrees, just 1% rain, might be a little windy, but the altitude, it's a little less than what it is in Johannesburg, but still pretty high, and that they're used to playing at. So we'll see how that shakes down, and we'll move on to our predictions and put our heads on the block there, going through all the provinces, starting with the Ulster against Edinburgh.
I fancy Ulster here by a couple of tries at least. I think they've got a bit of anger in them again. McCluskey not playing is an interesting one to see. The only thing I worry about Ulster is their go forward, especially from a point of view of their back row and centres. If you think of any team with Dwayne Vermeulen, and you think go forward should be a given, but he's sort of changed his game since he's lost a step. He's more of a jackler these days than that big, powerful ball carrier in the midfield. So it'll be interesting to see where they get their go forward. If they get go forward, I think they'll have too much for Edinburgh. I think they're on a 9-win streak or something against Edinburgh at the moment. So Edinburgh really don't have a lot to play for. They threw the ball around last week and looked okay. And if they do that, they can cause trouble for Ulster. But I reckon Ulster by about 14 to 17 points in that one.
Yeah, I was on the Red Hand podcast there just after they played us at the Aviva, and they asked me, how did I see them doing the rest of the season? I said, well, I mean, you're in the last 8. You've got 2 home matches now before the playoffs to get yourself together and get a squad ready for to have a real go at it. And I was positive myself being about it, but the attitude I got back was, "Oh, you're just being nice because you're after beating us." But I really do think they do have a chance with the squad they have of having a decent run in the playoffs. So we'll see how they get on. That moves us on to Munster, who are playing the Sharks.
This is the Munster game. Keith Thurles gets his 200 cap. Congratulations to him, an absolute stalwart of Munster and Irish rugby. The man himself, he's loved all over the country. He's not just loved down in Munster. What he's done for the game, both there and for his mental health work as well, is to be commended. And it's fantastic to see him getting back. Snyman's a huge loss. He was so destructive, line out, maul. He's just a freak athlete with his offloads through tackles where he's drawn in 3 or 4 men. That was really impressive last week for me, how he got guys into space, and he's going from RJ Snyman to Finian Wycherley is a massive drop off in terms of output. Wycherley will go around, he'll make his tackles and hit his rucks, but he's not going to be a game breaker in any way, shape or form. And I know one player doesn't make a team, but I think that takes what could be potentially a bonus point or a bonus point win from Ulster, because the Sharks can attack. but the Sharks also concede a hell of a lot of points. And you got guys in Munster that are playing. The two wingers in Nash and Daly have really impressed me. Even when Munster were struggling, those two always seemed to stand out. They had a really good shift on the much maligned Ireland A tour earlier on in the season. I think if there's two players that came out of that tour with their form and reputations enhanced, it was those two. I fancy the Sharks by maybe a try, but it wouldn't surprise me to see Munster pull out another win away there. I always think the Sharks are dependent on their own attitude and what they turn up with. If they turn up ready to play, they're a very, very hard team to stop. But I'll go to Sharks by 5 in this one for now, but I wouldn't surprise me to see Munster win it.
Yeah, they just haven't been able to get Klein and Snyman on the pitch at the same time, have they? And we saw what happened when they managed it, but no, they can definitely pull it out because, like you say, the Sharks can be erratic. Okay, we'll move on to Connacht now, who play Glasgow.
Yeah, up to about an hour ago, I would have said this game could be 36-35. It could be 40. It could be a bit of a basketball score at some stage. But the news that illness has taken Bundy Aki and Mac Hansen out of the squad is massive. It's good to see John Porch coming back, but I know Connacht fans love John Porch and think he's a very good player, but I just don't think he's the influence on the game of a Mac Hansen just yet. And Aki being out after impressing last week and getting man of the match, they're two massive losses for Connacht. I fancy Glasgow. I think Glasgow have got something about them at the moment. There's a bit of cussedness there. I think they're playing some very attractive but also very aggressive rugby up front. They put Munster away hard in Thomond Park. For about 60 minutes there, and it was one of the most impressive hours of rugby I've seen from any province or regional side this season in the URC. Very dangerous team, Glasgow. I fancy Glasgow to put Connacht away by about 15 points, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Leinster have been putting up a lot of big scores in the last couple of years, and we might have even forgotten about that quarterfinal from last year, but I'm sure Glasgow haven't forgotten about it, and I think they'd be extra determined to put in a better final 8 performance this season. So they're really highly motivated and going great at the moment. But been a good season for Connacht too. Although, like you say, it's they'll need those top line players for big matches like this. But we'll see how it goes. And of course, that leaves us with our game. Bulls against Leinster.
Yeah, I might put my Keno hat on and go with the South African team here. I think the Bulls probably just have a little bit too much, especially up front. Again, I think they'll concede tries. I can see a scoreline of potentially mid-30s to late 20s, something like that, but I'll go with the Bulls by 8 here in this one.
Yeah, it's a tricky one for a Leinster fan to predict, but I think if you're being realistic, it's you do have to say the home side of the favourites for this one. Okay, so that's our predictions then. And just to reference, just some other rugby going on this weekend. Best of luck as always to Nicola Friday and all the Irish women's squad out of their Six Nations date with England down in Cork, and plus of course all the AIL clubs as well involved in playoffs on Saturday afternoon. It's just a shame they all clash with Leinster's match, but that's where we are. Okay, well listen, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks, Mark, for joining me for another preview show.
Pleasure as always, Jeff.
And before we sign off, just a quick shout for Kigo, who normally is in with us for these previews. He's been known to dabble in a spot of stand-up in his day, and coming up on Tuesday, April 25th from 8 p.m. at On Show on Camden Street in Dublin. He's part of a bill which includes Emily Ashmore and Fiona Frawley. Be sure to check it out, and you'll get a discount on the door. Just use the code Harpin, Harpin. So anyway, be sure and join the conversation on Mastodon throughout the match, and then maybe head on to our Facebook page at full time and leave your thoughts there. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend of rugby wherever you are, and stay safe, everyone. Slán.